Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new season. It's not a new season. It's just a new game series of Something Rotten. This is part 2 of our Ops season. Blake and I, we've played Call of Duty Black Ops. We've experienced all the joys that that game has to give. And now we're on to our, I guess, the second part of our before and after. We are now playing Spec Ops The Line. A very interesting game for very different reasons than Call of Duty Black Ops. Blake, how you doing?
Yesterday I was talking to my dear, lovely girlfriend, the love of my life, the light of my entire world, Sam.
Now that everyone knows she likes being brought up on the podcast, are you just going to do it first?
Yeah, for sure. But I was like, I have to go play the SR game. And she was like, oh, that sucks. And I was like, no, the game's pretty good. And she was like, Black Ops? And I was like, no, Spec Ops. And then I had a moment where I had to explain to her that Black Ops and Spec Ops are two completely different things, which is my way of saying, y'all, I think we're wasting our lives. I felt like such an idiot yesterday.
No, babe, you don't understand. Black Ops is the bad one. Spec Ops is the thoughtful one.
Yeah, I was just like, all right.
Today, I am thrilled to be joined by not only Blake Hester, my lovely and ever-present co-host, but someone who I would say is partially the reason for the career that I have now, because I think of him as one of the progenitors of the video essay, but also the current host of the podcast Never Post and general man about the internet. Mike Rugnetta is here. Hello,
Jacob. Hello, Blake. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you, Mike. This is a little preview of our next episode, which I don't usually do. But next episode, we're going to be having Chris Franklin on, a.k.a. Errant Signal on YouTube. And I didn't do this intentionally, but you two are, like, some of the earliest examples of, like, video essays about shit, which is kind of fun to have both of you on the same game.
And I love Chris's work so much. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say about this.
Mike, I got curious in the moment when Jacob brought up the name of your podcast, and I was like, how often does Mike post? Is he a never poster?
Oh no,
I got but you only have 973 tweets, which compared to most is a never poster.
There's some context there, which is that I delete all my tweets once a year. Because I think that culturally we do not necessarily understand what a persistent textual record of someone's casual thoughts means and is good for.
That's fair.
And it feels to me like the thing I was thinking on a random Thursday afternoon has an expiry date of about a year, but like instead of just having things to automatically delete a year from when they were posted, I kind of have like a big personal ceremony where I just like delete everything
manually,
take a week off of the internet. There is a script that I run locally on my computer where I watch the progress bar, delete everything that I've put. Yeah, I just delete Twitter. I've never deleted I've never deleted Instagram. I deleted all of my Tumblr, but never going back there. Just done with that. Yeah.
Every once in a while, I have like a 7-year-old tweet someone liked pop up that clearly they were just searching like from Jakob G42 gay or something, and then like saw like what have you said about that? And I'm like, oh boy, I should probably not have a record of any of this.
Horrifying.
I'm gonna go. Let's continue the show, but I'm gonna look that up real quick.
Oh, good. Mike, so I first learned of you, as many people did, from Idea Channel, which, as I said, was this kind of early video essay type source. And like the first video that you have on there is about Mario, but I don't actually know like how much of a gamer you are. You know, like how much I think of you as just like someone who's in touch with culture, but I don't know how much of that culture is like games as opposed to, any other thing that you could be doing.
I mean, I think I also don't know the answer to this question, so that makes sense that it's confusing for people who are maybe outside my brain too. I'm interested in games. I like games. I would say that I play a fair amount of video games. I don't self-identify as a gamer, but that has a lot to do with a lot in the world.
No one should self-identify as a gamer.
Yeah. Do I think of myself as someone who's like, but I also don't think of myself as like a movie buff or whatever, but I watch a lot of movies. I will say over the last like maybe 5 years, my interest in games has shifted almost entirely to games that are as small as possible, like games that are quick, games that are made by small teams, games that are cheap. I find myself like increasingly just sort of impatient with, I'm doing big quote fingers, AAA games. And especially over the last 2 years, because 2 years ago I had a kid, my time is just used for different things now. And so that interest became kind of a necessity, where like, if I want to play games, it's hard for me to find time to sit down and play something where it's like, I have to invest a lot of time in it, and I have to be able to like put it down at a moment's notice, or if that's what I'm doing, that's the thing I'm doing, and I don't get to do anything else. So, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like super plugged in, but I'm interested.
And okay, well, first let's pause. Blake, did you find anything good searching my Twitter for the word gay?
Indeed, I did.
Oh no!
But I closed the tab. I didn't know that we were going to go back to this. Hold on,
you can't. Yeah, you can't set up that thing and then not pay it off.
So, oh no, where did it go? You had some quote about Glee being dripping gay, which is like calling a rotisserie chick. It's something along the.
Good.
It sounds like it was a good post.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm not gonna go and delete it right now.
It was probably fine.
Can I just see if I can find?
Let's see if I can just
search. Now I'm gonna search your feed just for rotisserie chicken.
Yeah, I guess that's what I could do.
This is probably like a quote that someone said in my high school that I was repeating or something. Glee is dripping in gay. It's like a rotisserie chicken just spinning in its own gay.
Yeah, and that
classic.
That was tweeted June 5th, 2013. So
on a scale from 1 to holds up, how do we feel about that?
I think that was fine. I think that was a fine thing to tweet.
I do want to say I have more tweets about Glee. Apparently, February 5th, 2019, I said, thinking about what Glee would have been like during Trump, I bet they would have done a big rainbow-filled protest song, and then Finn would reveal he was MAGA because of financial reasons, and they'd come down in the middle, which I think holds up. I think that's a pretty...
I think that's fully holds up, yeah.
I'd like to say, you could go through my entire Twitter feed, wouldn't find one problematic tweet in there.
I believe it. Okay.
Jacob, on the other hand? A little suspect.
We'll see.
Little suspect.
Spec Ops The Line is an interesting game to be covering in the year 2024, because earlier this year, it was delisted from online retailers. This is a game that I just own on Steam and have owned since like 2015 or whatever. And if you have it, you can still download it. But like anyway else, there is something on the Internet Archive that you can download. There are unofficial sources. But it's a weird part of this game's legacy in that, like, it is a game that people still talk about a lot. And for it to just be disappeared, I wouldn't call it quite a PT. I think it's more accessible than something like PT, but like it feels almost within that realm. Mike, I had offered you some files to download, and then you were like, oh, wait, I got a copy. How did that happen?
I forgot that I had purchased it on Steam, and I went back and I checked the date of the receipt in my email the day before it got removed.
Okay. Yeah, because we did know it was coming. Yeah.
And like because I many, many years ago on Idea Channel, I made a video about like kind of about ludonarrative dissonance, kind of about like how it is that it feels controlling a video game character and like the situations in which it feels like you are in charge of them versus it feels like you are them. And when I had made that video, I had not even ever heard of Spec Ops, The Line. And so I had not mentioned it. And that video is called, I think, Controlling versus Being Your Video Game Avatar. And tons of people were like, I can't believe you made this video without talking about Spec Ops: The Line. That's what this game is about. And I never played it. And so when I saw that it was getting removed, rushed to go grab it, thinking someday I'll have an excuse to play this. And here we are.
And so I have perhaps erroneously stated, what we know is that the game was removed because of like licensing things. And when I heard that, I immediately thought, oh, it's a cover of Jimi Hendrix's, like, the Star Spangled Banner that plays at the beginning. But I forgot, actually, playing this through, that there is a lot of licensed music. And so...
Yeah, there's a lot of music in this game.
I don't think the publishers said specifically what song it was, but, like, as is often the case, some license of some song lapsed, and that is the reason that it is no longer available, as far as I know. Blake, you played this on a Steam Deck of acclaimed guest of this podcast, AJ Moser.
That's right. I attempted to acquire this game by nefarious means. And in a history's first, I failed at pirating a game and had to play it legally instead. I tried
the first time that's ever happened?
Yeah, I tried for like an hour to pirate this fucking game. Finally, I asked my roommate. I was like, "Hey, do you have Spec Ops?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then I was good. But I'm playing on a Steam Deck. It's not Steam Deck certified. I don't know.
Compatible?
Yes, it's not like. So there's some quirks to it. It chugs a little bit, but otherwise,
I played it on a Steam Deck. Yeah.
It's like a totally fine little way to play.
Fine.
Here's the thing about this game I wasn't fully prepared for.
Yeah.
It feels, not mechanically, like just thematically, in a way I don't know if I've experienced with a military shooter. It feels like hell. Like, it's insane. Like, it feels miserable. I don't mean like it feels bad to play. Like, I play it and I feel rotten.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised how, like, we had talked about doing this game for a while on this podcast, Something Rotten, and I, like, wasn't quite sure how rotten it was going to be, and then I started playing it, and I was like, oh my god, this is extremely rotten.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, I think I would go one step further and just say, I think I maybe just hated this game.
Yeah, like the experience of playing it, or, like, define what level of hate.
Well, I mean, so like I said, like I had mentioned before we started recording, I rolled credits on it last night. So I'm still working through the total experience. I know that we're just talking about the first bit, but I think I didn't like any aspect of it.
Okay.
I think in hindsight, I did not enjoy playing it in ways that were unintentional, mm-hmm. and I did not enjoy playing it also in ways that were intentional.
Right. So it was succeeding on some level, which was success in making you not like it, but that was paired with other unintentional ways in which you also did not like it.
Blake, when you started saying, like, I'm playing this game, this was hell, I was like, hell yeah, dude. Yes, it was. It was.
I do think I like this game. It's not particularly, like, mechanically interesting. Except I do like that you can command your little guys. That's really fun. No, I mainly mean like we've played Call of Duty games where like in the story it's like, oh, this is hell. But it's like, it's fucking Call of Duty. Like, you're still having fun. And at no point in this game do I feel like an American badass. I'm like, this just feels sad. I feel like a bad person.
Yeah, so I will say at the beginning of this that this is one of those video games that someone has gone and written a whole book about. That it's a book that you can buy on itch.io by the author Brendan Keogh, who's gone on to write like other really interesting books about like the video games and the climate or whatever. But this book is called Killing. It's called Killing is Harmless, published in 2012, which he has since, I think, said that he's not as much of a fan of, which I understand as someone who makes things. I, dislike a lot of my old writing. But I read this whole thing and I enjoyed it a lot, so I'll probably be referring to it throughout this pod. But I think, I mean, for people who have not played Spec Ops before, I do think that the kind of ground setting, fundamental idea of the game is this idea that it is a kind of almost sneakily generic military shooter that turns into a non-generic military storyline that in many ways feels targeted at what other games are doing with war. Like that is the high level take on this game, is like, oh, we're going to kind of subvert the typical ideas of video game war. And one of the interesting things, or one of the things that I'm interested in like getting to on this podcast and in this discussion, is like, does it do that, A, and B, does it have things to say about war and not just video game war? Which I feel like is an interesting distinction, and I believe, though I'll dig up the source for this for like our next episode, but I'm pretty sure that at least one of the lead developers on this has said, like, we're not trying to make statements on war in general. We're just trying to talk about how other video games talk about war, which they are certainly making some statements about war, whether they mean to or not. And like dissecting where those lie is I think part of the, the most interesting part of this game's legacy, maybe. Mike, so you knew that this was a game that people had yelled at you for not including in a video essay before.
Yeah.
Did you like know what it was doing, quote unquote, when you started playing it? Like, did you kind of have an idea of like, this is the game's mission, is it's going to make me feel bad about things?
Yeah, I did. Both because of what people had said in response to that video, and then just, hanging out with friends, having conversations about games. This had come up a lot, especially in conversations of like, like I mentioned, I'm playing like fewer and fewer AAA games. I think actually the last game that I played before this one, where you are a human holding a gun shooting at other humans, was in like 2008 or 2009.
BioShock.
So there's a
do you remember what it was?
I think it was one of the Call of Duties.
Okay.
It was like the World War One. I think it was a World War One Call of Duty. I could go look if you want.
Battlefield 1? I don't think Call of Duty has done a World War One.
It must have been World
title.
War Two. Maybe
but
it was
like maybe there's a World at War. Was one of the Call of Duties where you're in like Japan and fighting as the Soviets.
It was something. It was either a World War One or a World War Two, like, older setting war game.
Mm-hmm.
And I played a lot of it, and I put it down, and I remember thinking to myself, like, that's enough. That's enough of that. I don't think I need to do this anymore. And I've dipped back in now and again, especially for games that are like more cartoony. Like maybe I'll feel okay about being a human shooting at other humans, but I never get more than like a couple hours in where I'm like, it's all right. I'm all right. And so this has come up a lot when, talking with friends about what games they like and what they're into and what we're all doing and like the state of the world and, how media functions in contemporary society. And everybody's like, oh, you got to play Spec Ops: The Line because it's like kind of about this. And so, yeah, I had known what its deal was, that it's difficult subject matter on purpose, and that it forces you in a few ways to confront what it is to be someone playing these types of games directly.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, I think I didn't realize the level to which I was like dragging you back into a world that you had avoided for at this point 16 years.
If I didn't want to do it, I would have said, Jacob, I'm good.
Okay.
But I thought this was finally an experience to play this game. And like, what a good, I got a lot of distance from this type of thing. So it was really interesting to see it, from my current vantage point. And maybe probably also explains why I didn't like it as much as I did.
I mean, and for the record, yeah, you played twice the amount that you had to. Like, we would not have been upset if you stopped after the point that we're stopping in this record.
I did take, I believe, a 2-week break. I put it down and I was like, I gotta just chew on this for a while and like get ready. Because I want to finish it, but I have to sort of compartmentalize where this game goes inside my brain.
Blake, here's a question for you. Something that I know we share is the problematic love of big towers in a big city called Dubai.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that this game was set in Dubai?
Yes.
Okay.
I sure did. One of the great ethical struggles of my life is not buying a plane ticket to go to Dubai. I want to so bad, and yeah, I can't bring myself to do it. Yeah, I did know the game was set there. I think the setting is crazy and really cool.
I think that I
don't fully understand the eco disaster that happened in the city. I'm like kind of wish the game would unpack that a little more, but yeah, I did in fact know.
I think that it is one of the coolest aspects of this game, and certainly like visually striking in the way that most games where you're a guy who shoots other guys are not, is like the visual extravagance with which they depict Dubai. And they really do it like from moment one on to, basically the last thing that we played for this section is like, this is a game with big fucking skyscrapers that you are going to see far away and close up, and you're going to be standing on top of them looking down, and you're going to be standing at the bottom of them looking up, and like it really it is so much more engaging than just your average Call of Duty level on just like a visual level.
I think like also like the way it kind of makes you feel insignificant really works to the story, as you just like kind of blindly like, why am I here? Like, not really understanding your setting really works too.
And in more ways than one too, because it's like there are the vast panoramas of just sandblasted yellow, which like, you know, sure. And those do make you feel insignificant. Then you're standing at the bottom of all of these massive towers, and a lot of which are wrecked because of the ecological disaster that's ongoing. But then, to Jacob's point, like once you get inside, you also feel insignificant inside a bunch of the interiors. These like massive, opulent, palatial, like very colorful, if muted because there's no power or whatever. But it's a really nice balance, but it always maintains that sense of like where am I even supposed to be? Like out in the open, even when you're inside.
Yeah, and they're playing a lot with the contrast of opulence with kind of devastation and refugees. And I mean, there's like a very specific moment where you're walking through like a refugee camp, and it has like silks and like a grand piano in it, and it's this kind of thing of like, look, there is so much wealth here, but like none of that is like water that you can drink, and so people are just leaving it behind. I think there's a point that Kyo makes early in his book talking about the idea of Dubai as like a geopolitical position. And I think one of the interesting things about this game is that it names like real locations and real wars in ways that even, most Call of Duty games do not. So, like, this game is not making up fictional Middle Eastern countries to set their conflicts in. And like Dubai specifically being in some ways this kind of imposition of the West. Like obviously Dubai is in large part funded by like, Middle Eastern oil money. It's not like it was built by Americans, but it is this idea of like, hey, look, it's like New York over there. They got big skyscrapers. Like, we understand this city in the way that we understand big American cities. Then seeing that completely kind of returned to nature also is doing a lot of metaphorical work in this kind of like the idea of Americans abroad and their like influence eroding. And what you find out, like one of the major plot lines of this game is there is the damned 33rd was like this military squadron that left Afghanistan and came here in an attempt to do something that you're still kind of trying to figure out. But like the idea of American influence on this and like Western influence on this city, I do think is like seeing this thing, surreally covered by sand, like covered in some scenes like by thousands of feet of sand, is this kind of interesting, like, city being taken back by something. And I don't know if the metaphor would be by nature or by like the Middle Eastern world, and in that case it gets pretty a little tenuous. But like, I do think, you know, there for almost every choice in this game, I will say they are consciously trying to do a thing, and whether that thing is like fully working or not is, you know, is debatable. But like, their choices, you know, they're making choices, which, you know, it's like with Black Ops, there were so many things that just felt completely thoughtless in it. You know, the fact that you would like get in a helicopter and destroy, you know, an entire, like, you know, expanse of Vietnam just felt like, well, it's because you need a helicopter level.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, if kind of the back half of my 20s hadn't been filled with playing so many fucking COD games for my job. I wonder what my reaction to Spec Ops would be, if I would be more like Mike, where I'm just like, I'm not really into this. But like, there is like a weird sensation of Spec Ops feeling like a breath of fresh air for me, despite the fact it's, you know, nearly 15 years old. Because I have like fucking consumed so much Call of Duty garbage over the years, especially like playing Black Ops a week or two before this, like going to Spec Ops. I'm like, oh my God, this is dare I say narrative.
Like, yeah, right. It has a lot of intention to it that just doesn't exist in all those other games, which is just like, just a parade of dude, wouldn't it be cool moments.
Yeah.
You know, and there's some dude, wouldn't it be cool in this, but it's like, then they stopped and they were like, okay, but like, let's justify that.
But maybe
and
it wasn't cool. Oh no.
Oh no. Put it in, like, keep it in.
I mean, it does sometimes feel like literally that simplistic, but there is something about like the three characters, no one knows their names. Who these guys?
Walker, Lugo, Adams.
Lugo and Adams.
Yeah. Excuse me for forgetting Walker and Adams. But like, I don't know. There's something refreshing for just seeing three dudes like losing their grip on their situation after playing something like Black Ops, where it's like, man, I'm just like various versions of James Bond. You know, like the scene where they like have a physical confrontation with each other, like one of the dudes punches the other. I was like, oh, this is like kind of interesting for a military shooter, especially of this era, the PlayStation 3 era, that I really do like.
Yeah, they get it feels stupid to say, but they get so much mileage out of just telling a linear story with like very few characters, you know, and specifically all of the COD games are so attached to telling these like international stories with so many characters and like jumping back and forth in time in Black Ops, and you're just like, what the fuck is going, like, what am I even supposed to be taking from this? And so you're
supposed to be taking dude cool.
Boom. And so just having like a story happen in a line, and one of, you know, it allows them to do cool things like the characters' appearances getting increasingly like fucked up over the course of this game and kind of never going away is this like very interesting thing that it can just do, because it's like telling a story in a line. And I think one of the kind of enduring images of this game is like the main character's extremely fucked up looking face, which, you know, it's like unlike Metal Gear Solid 5 when you like go do a mission and you come back covered in blood and then you can take a shower and you're fine again. It's like you don't get fine, and I think that it's kind of interesting.
In more ways than one, you do not get fine.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that like I don't know that you could really call it the inciting incident, but like, you know, the thing that starts so much of this extremely linear narrative is one of the characters just turning to another one of the characters and going like, I don't know, dude, this is pretty fucked up.
Yep.
Paraphrasing. But like not complicated, yet in this setting, you're like, whoa, you know? Like, the bravery.
Yeah, dude. It's like one of those things where it's because it's a video game, you have to lower the bar often to fucking below the surface of the earth. On the other hand, I got to play a lot of fucking video games. It's pretty refreshing when the game is like, war, what is it good for? I'm like, yeah, man, what is it good for?
And I think it does also, it works because of its, you know, your inherent lowering of the bar and the game playing basically exactly like Gears of War, and like putting you in this mindset of like, I'm playing a dumb game, and characters just go ahead, Blake.
I want to push back on it. I mechanically actually do think it's like doing something interesting in terms of how the firefights just feel overwhelming, and like they don't feel impossible because it's kind of an easy game, but like just the insane sound of everything and how many enemies there are on screen, I do think is like going a long way to like amplifying its whole narrative shtick of this sucks, man. Like I am never feeling like in Call of Duty, I'm just having so much fun tapping heads. And in this game, it's like, I guess that cliche Last of Us thing, like I'm not having fun, but I think it's going a long way actually to like beefing up what this game is trying to say.
I played this once in our living room without headphones on, and my wife at one point, after a few minutes of me playing through some level, was like, that sounds extremely unpleasant.
Yeah, but like I think that's a compliment for this.
Yeah, that's
like,
yeah,
you're
like,
in it, you know. Like
yeah,
I think
it's
that's
supposed
like, yeah, I think that's a strength of the game actually.
I told the story last week of me playing Black Ops in my office without headphones, and my partner being fine with it, and then during the credits an Eminem song starts playing, and she just yelled up, "What the fuck are you doing?" I do want to another just like kind of baseline thing that I want to talk about before we get into the literal story is that this is maybe the most intentional Nolan North casting of all time. You know, that Nolan North is one of the most prolific video game actors of all time. Obviously, he is Nathan Drake in Uncharted, but he's also like 40 billion grunts in different games. Like he's just one of those guys, and he voices the main character of Walker in this game, doing not really an affectation. Like I think he basically sounds like Nathan Drake in this. And Brendan Keogh has a line in his book early on where he was like, there are kind of two ways of viewing this, which is either this is the game where Nathan Drake goes insane, or this is the game that shows that Nathan Drake has always been insane. And both of those I really like. And I like, again, it's like the genericness of just having the video game voice guy as your main guy in this game that is theoretically, you know, like a take on video game violence is, I think, like really clever if you want to give it the credit of them like doing it intentionally, which I kind of do. Yeah.
Yeah, but did you know that's not Troy Baker over the radio?
Oh, it's not.
No, it's not. I was like, man, I cannot stand Troy Baker's fucking voice, man. And I looked it up. It turns out it's not him. So sorry to the dude over the radio.
It was a little earlier. I mean, I guess Troy Baker was already Joel, but he hadn't quite ascended to every single video game.
This was before Last of Us.
Oh, really?
Before Last of Us came out.
What was as a just a quick aside, because you mentioned it and I'm curious. What was the timing of this in relationship to Gears of War?
This came out in 2012. Gears of War came out much earlier in like 2007, 2006 or something.
Yeah, okay. That was my sense, was that Gears of War had been around for quite a while.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting in that when this came out, there were a lot of cover shooters like this. I mean, arguably Uncharted is also basically just a stop and pop cover shooter. And now there are not nearly as many. So like playing this in 2024 doesn't really feel as routine as playing it probably upon release. And actually a lot of the reviews of this game were like, okay, well, mechanically it's just another one of these cover shooters, and
this is what we do now.
Yeah. And now I think that criticism actually doesn't hold up quite as much, just because like we don't have the same glut of third-person cover shooters that we did in 2012. And so it's one of the ways that the game actually maybe feels a little more fresh than it did upon its initial release. So go ahead.
I don't want to get us off track, and maybe this is something we're going to talk about later, but like I have a lot of thoughts and maybe questions about the fact that Walker is meant to appear, or seemingly meant to appear, if we want to give them the credit, as like kind of empty vessel for the game player, a very sort of generic everyman into which you can imagine investing yourself.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk more on that.
I think that this is a thing that a lot of games do, that games for some reason, or people who make them, or maybe audience members, I haven't talked to a lot of people about this, like think is successful and just fundamentally isn't.
Uh-huh.
I think it just doesn't. I think it doesn't work. I think making someone generic in the hopes that the audience will then feel invested in them doesn't ever feel successful to me, and I think was a major shortcoming of this game, where ostensibly I am meant to feel like I am doing bad things. And I only ever felt like this sort of bland other, like, guy on the other side of the screen was just like, I'm clicking buttons. And like, you can tell the game really doesn't want me to feel like I'm clicking buttons, but I can't get away from clicking buttons. And I think part of it is like, I don't know who this guy is. He has no history. He's got no presence in this world. He's just like dropped fresh as a baby into this thing. They get into some of his backstory, but like not so much that I feel like he is really like a significant party. And I would just want to know how you guys felt about that.
Yeah, I think that most games are unsuccessful at making me feel bad for a thing that the game wants me to feel bad for doing, like, as a player. I think that is a pretty hard thing to pull off, and I don't quite think that for this, I'm never like overcome with guilt as a player for doing things, because I just like, I understand how a video game works, and I think that the idea of like, well, you could just turn it off is like a pretty dumb way of kind of like describing choice in media. What I do like about Walker is this the kind of strange confidence that he is given as a video game protagonist is the thing that the game constantly subverts. You know, like this game does the same thing that a lot of video games do, which is the main character just says something, and we kind of all assume it to be true because it is something that he said. And like, what I would argue Spec Ops is actually best at, or one of the things that it's best at, is like having the main characters make assumptions that are then shown to be tremendously incorrect. And their kind of inability to ever deal with that is then what ultimately kind of drives them insane. But like, I do like, you know, when we were just playing Call of Duty Black Ops, it's like people would just say something and everyone would act on what was said, and the game would never go back to reflect on like, was that right? Like, what they said like a good thing to act on? And I do think that in here, you're just kind of like making calls in the normal video game character way, and then the game brings that back around and is like, maybe not. Maybe it's not good to be so confident about all of these things that you're doing.
That's a really good point. Insofar as what this game is doing is playing with the base level material of other games, you kind of have to start with generic man shape and then, you know, turn the mirror around and be like, how does it feel to control generic man shape in this scenario? Do you like this? Are you having a good time?
I think that, like, for me, that is one of the things that makes the game feel effective. Like, The Last of Us is always giving you feedback that this is bad and uncomfortable. But like, Spec Ops has this veneer of like, bro, it's just like, it's like all the other games. You know what this is.
Push the button. To go forward, you gotta push the button.
I mean, think about like the opening level of this game is so fucking action hero shit. Like, you're just doing a Gatling gun from a moving helicopter through the skyline of Dubai. Like, it's pretty, dare I say, badass. And I like the like way it starts you on that foot and then slowly starts to erode what you think this game is.
Yeah, and I think here's actually an interesting thing about the opening. Did you notice that it does a Metal Gear Solid 2 thing, and that it includes your name in the credits?
Yes.
When you're playing it, it says like special guest Jakob G42 or like special guest your name, which I thought was kind of fun. Yeah,
this joins the great canon of video game levels where you blow the shit out of a bunch of buildings in a helicopter on SR. Jacob, do you prefer this or Kane and Lynch 2?
Kane and Lynch 2. It was always going to be my answer. But
yeah, okay.
Mike, if you want to play the game that feels more like hell than any other game, but in maybe the most interesting way anyone's ever done it, Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days.
Kane and Lynch 2.
What
All
a
right.
game. Okay, yeah, so the game starts. We have this brief kind of prologue with blowing the shit out of other guys in a helicopter. But we are called into Dubai because Dubai's been hit by a massive sandstorm. There's kind of a distress signal that went out. A different group of, like, the U.S. military, this squad called the Damned 33rd, has gone in to supposedly help the evacuation. No one's heard from them. Walker, the main character, hears a distress call from his old commander named Conrad in a very overt Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now kind of reference. And so they go in, and it is, again, I think I want to give the game credit, like, intentionally kind of generic, where the first people you meet are just some random dudes, and they have guns, and you have guns, and you briefly try to negotiate, and it immediately turns into you killing them, and you then go on to kill, 40 more people before the end of the level. But it does, there's this interesting moment where, the guys that you're talking to, everything's going okay, and then, your partner whispers to you, hey, if things go south, shoot the glass above them, because there's a bunch of sand that will break and come down, which is one of the game's kind of mechanics. And then the guys see you talking, and they're like, hey, they're talking about how to kill us. And that's when they start shooting at you. And it's that is what our characters were doing, is talking about how to kill them. And so I do feel there are so many situations in this game in which I think the game really wants you to think, what would it be like to be on the other side of this? And in almost every situation, it's these three dudes show up and start just slaughtering us for reasons beyond our understanding. And that starts very early on with this first group of enemies. Also, they refer to the enemies as refugees, which is interesting. I certainly think there is not a Call of Duty enemy that has been referred to as a refugee, because that is a name that just kind of inherently belies some sympathy. We continue. They kind of establish the dynamic of the characters, where it's Walker's the commander, Lugo makes bad jokes, Adams is there, and you can command the characters to do different things. You can tell Lugo to snipe people, or Adams to flash spam. Blake, you like this? I never did it while playing.
Oh, I use it all the time, dude. I'm in there fucking command and conquer in these fucking firefights. I'm going in.
Low orbit ion cannon.
I'm going into a firefight. I'm surveying the land from behind. And then all of a sudden, I'm all the dudes up top, they're sniping them. I have flashbangs going out to big groups, and then I'm headshotting those dudes. I
would do it every once in a while. I couldn't get it to reliably work.
I use it before I fire a single shot. I'm pressing the command button and giving orders. Wow. I love it. It's so fun.
Yeah, so there is kind of a quiet discussion of hey, I think Adam says anyone feel we should talk to these guys again? And you're immediately we're way past that. And I'm we're 20 minutes into the game. We are not way past that. But I think the kind of first interesting thing in the game happens when very early, in maybe the second or third level, there is this shift where you are fighting refugees, insurgents, enemies that are generically kind of coded as the Arab residents of Dubai. And then it shifts and you start killing US military. And that is largely who you will be killing for the rest of the game. And that is, again, an interesting choice.
Wild. Absolutely wild to me when that started happening.
Yeah, and
just shocking. Yeah.
You know, and the fact that they kind of, in some ways, it feels like the game doesn't give you a lot of time to think about it. I mean, there's this kind of scene where you find out that the CIA has also been sent into Dubai. And I think the game is intentionally kind of murky with the details because you don't know more than, like, your characters do. But, like, the CIA has been sent in, and the 33rd hates the CIA, and the CIA hates them, and there are lines about how it's, like, not uncommon for the CIA to hide behind human shields, which I was like, whoa!
That was when they started being like, we have to kill one another because of the CIA meddling. That was the moment where I was like, okay, that's some balls. Like, it's pretty good.
We're gonna talk about the CIA more on the bonus episode because I've been reading a book loosely about the CIA that's pretty bad. Well, it's a good book, but you get what I'm saying. But yeah, that moment dropping, I was like, hell yeah, man.
Yeah, and I mean,
go for it, Walt Williams.
In comparison to Call of Duty Black Ops, where you are escorted by Secretary McNamara into, like, the heart of the CIA, and you talk to JFK, and they're like, multiple doomsdays have been averted in this room, and it's like, man, fuck, the CIA is so cool. Like, this immediately being like, maybe they're the reason this whole situation is this fucked up is very interesting.
A big wait, are we the baddies kind of moment, you know?
Yes, and we is doing a lot of work there, because it's like, okay, definitely Americans are the baddies. Like, that's kind of not up for debate, but, like, at some point, basically the our group starts killing the 33rd at first because the 33rd seems to think that they are CIA and are trying to kill them. But then the next kind of major inciting incident is you enter into this giant lobby of some building, and you see the 33rd doing what you assume is basically, like, rounding up civilians to kill them. Like, it looks like they are, like, putting them into a concentration camp or something, and you immediately make the call to just, like, kill everyone, and kill everyone in a way where, like, this is a big moment in the game where you blow up the main window of the skyscraper, and so much sand rolls in that it basically destroys the entire environment. And it is really like a scorched earth approach that you're taking. And so this question of, are we the CIA? Are they fighting us because the CIA did something bad, or we did something bad, almost immediately vanishes, because then you just decide that, like, they've gone crazy and they're hurting civilians for some kind of nefarious means. And again, it's just like, it's a decision that's made, and you kind of never reflect on it. You just, like, operate as, like, that's the status quo for the rest of the game.
Well, yeah, in so much of those scenarios, like this one, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's like there's a bunch of gunfire. It's like what Blake was describing. There's a bunch of gunfire. Things are really loud. There's people. There's you, Adams, and Lugo shouting at one another over your radios. You also hear all of the radios of the people that you're firing at, and someone somewhere is like, shoot out the window! We have to shoot out the window!
Yeah.
And a big red circle shows up.
Yep.
And you're like, fuck, okay, sure, all right, whatever. And it's like, then that happens, you're like, oh no.
Yeah, I was just listening to the red circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also, if you pay attention to this, there are a shocking number of combat situations that start with the enemies completely unaware of you. And there's a very light level of stealth in which you can attach a silencer to one of your rifles and kill, like, maybe 2 guys before other people notice. But, like, more relevant, I think, is just, like, you are starting these firefights. And there's a scene later on where Walker does a Buster Keaton ass comically long fall down the side of a skyscraper, like just like he falls from the top of the Burj Khalifa to the bottom. But you land behind a car, and you have, like, a Desert Eagle with 6 shots, and there are a bunch of guys, like, walking around, and for you, it's like it's a very harrowing survival situation because you need to get a gun so you can get out of there. But it's like if you put yourself in the position of those guys, you're just walking around kind of an empty parking lot, and a dude with a Desert Eagle pops out from behind a car and just starts, like, demolishing you. And it is very, like, there are so many situations in which you are the instigators, and you're just like, well, these guys would kill us, so time to kill them all.
It's like, something bad could happen. Better make something really bad happen.
Make something really bad happen. Blake, let me ask you a question. As a purveyor of real life graffiti, how do you feel about the graffiti in this game? Because there's a lot of it, and it's pretty involved.
I don't know that I've really noticed.
Oh well,
any of it.
It's crazy. There are like dead kids.
Let's talk about the environmental storytelling.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you mean like the big murals of like people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. In my head, here's the thing.
You were thinking like cut off their limbs.
Murals and graffiti, two different things to me, but like I'm not a purveyor of graffiti. I don't know what
you've talked about it multiple times on the show. You've talked about the big one on top of the building. You talked about like
pretty cool.
Anyway,
pretty cool.
What do you think of the murals?
Mike, when I was creeping on your Twitter, I saw you live in New York.
Do.
Okay, so like in the financial district, there's that unfinished giant skyscraper.
This is the fourth time our listeners are hearing about this, but it's so cool.
I know of the unfinished skyscraper in Brooklyn that we call Supervillain Tower.
No, okay, now that building rocks, and I love that building. Okay. Jacob, you know which one I'm talking about? The giant like Gotham.
Oh
building?
yeah, I saw it.
It's so cool. In the financial district,
I maybe don't know this one. No, okay.
There's an unfinished skyscraper. It's huge. Okay. And at the top, there is a graffiti tag, this massive graffiti tag. And when I looked at it, I noticed there would be no way to stand and do the tag, meaning someone would have to hang off. And so I did research. Did you know there's a whole crew of rappelling graffiti artists in New York?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's the coolest thing I've ever. I almost got hit by a car looking at this graffiti tag.
You can find pictures. You can find pictures of the stuff that they use to hook on to a chimney so that they can hold on the side of a building. And it looks fucking medieval. It's wild.
Bro, it looks like the fucking Babysitters Club or some shit. Like just some like blankets fucking tied together. Anyway, Jacob, what about these murals?
I think they're pretty intense. There's a lot of art that is very on the nose. Like it is extremely kind of Banksy level, I guess I would say, in that it's like, oh, it's a reporter with a skull face filming like a flower through a TV camera or something. But I do think like I think that it's pretty well done, and like there are some of these where you will see like, I think there's one of the things where you see like a bunch of guys like lined up and executed against a wall. There is this giant mural of just like kids with it's not like they're gory, but they have kind of vacant eyes.
It's fucking creepy.
And it's like
creepy as shit.
It feels like it's just like a big mural of dead kids. And like as we will talk about soon, this game does like dead kids are part of the casualties of war in a more explicit way than most games I can think of. You know, certainly Call of Duty does not really interact with like kids dying apart from when they want to shock you in Modern Warfare 3 by like blowing up a girl. And so
play as that kid. You play as that kid. Remember that? You know that level
you play as the kid and you like kill a bunch of people with a revolver.
Yeah. Crazy fucking game.
But
no, the graffiti and murals haven't particularly hit me too hard yet. There was a moment though where you round a corner and you see a giant billboard for Dubai tourism, which is weird because you're in Dubai. And then just like a bunch of bodies piled up next to it, which I thought was an interesting visual moment. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like they make sure to like call out like the idea of Dubai as this paradise while you are like looking at mass graves.
It doesn't like every major character at some point is like, welcome to Dubai. You know,
yeah.
Like there's
But it's like one of the more visually strong moments of that is just like, oh, okay. And I think like right that afterwards is when you turn the corner and you see all the bodies hung from
lampposts.
Light posts.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think, again, it's like they explicitly reference the, like, I think true fact that it's like, if American service members are in the Middle East and they go on vacation, they're going to Dubai. Like, that is like a big part of the tourism, is like, that's where dudes in the military go to like hang out and spend their money on their time off. And so again, it is this like calling out Dubai as a vacation spot, I think, is this very intentional, like, hey, these people are coming here to do this. I think I bring up the artwork because I think that there is this thing that they will become more obvious as the game goes on, but like the game is very intentionally surreal in a lot of ways that I really enjoy, you know, and it's like the art is part of it, where like you see it and you're like, who could have possibly had the time to do this? But I do think that's part of the point, is that like, you know, there are just these lavish, horrifying murals on the wall, but also like, I'm sure we will get emails about this if we don't mention it, but like, I've talked about how I love physical metaphors in games of ascent or descent. This is one of those games where you are going down the entire game. Like, no matter where you start, even if you start in seemingly a low place, you will end up lower. And some levels put you in an unexpectedly high place just so you can keep going down, where you like, you think you're on the ground. I think, I mean, like, one of the best moments in the game, just visually, is you think you're on the ground and you walk through some like big blown out doorway and realize that you are on top of a skyscraper, and you see this like canyon of skyscrapers below you. And like, it is, you know, much like Returnal or Playdead's Inside. Like, this is a game where like going up and going down are like very important, and you basically never go up. You just like keep going down the whole time, which is cool. I like that as a little bit of, yeah, we're going into hell. That's what this game is about.
Yeah, the more I've thought about this game, I think I do actually like, I think I like this game. Like a fair amount. Mike, I'm kind of curious though, like, what didn't land for you?
Oh boy. Okay. I think I'm realizing a couple things. The first is like, you know, obviously my appetite for just like walking forward and shooting is pretty low. So I got like pretty bored. I found this game pretty boring. That's me. All of these things are probably just going to be me. I'm probably just not accepting the game on its own terms, and so I will accept that.
But that's, I mean, I love shooting games. As playing this, I was like, this is really a click on guys' heads game. That, like, all I was doing in every level is just clicking on guys' heads.
Clicking on a head, going into slow motion, just sustaining slow motion for an entire scene, and then I'm done.
Yep.
And someone shouts, "That's it, we're clear!" Like, all right, I guess.
I mean, you could have been using the command option, really, diversify.
It would be an even more indirect click on a guy's head.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's one part of it. And, like, maybe this is related to the second thing, like, not in a way where it would be one thing if it was boring in a way where it was like, I'm bored and I'm forced to really reckon in the moment with what I'm doing. And I'm given an excuse and a reason and an opportunity to be like, are you having fun clicking on heads to kill people? And it's after the moment that we are stopping at for this conversation. There is precisely one moment in the game where that happens. And I think that like my sort of base reason that I didn't like it for like higher level reasons than just I found it kind of boring sort of falls or, derives from maybe that complaint, which is like, for all of the risks that were taken and for all of the stuff where it was like, wow, like admitting that the CIA is bad, not leaving open for question that like the Americans' presence here is like, you're the bad guys. Mm-hmm. It's just like, which side of the bad guys is worse? Or like, do you even really consider that it's worse? Like, they're both just bad. Just leave. Just put down the game, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I actually felt it maybe kind of a little cowardly. And I think there's probably a certain amount of cowardice that's just required by making a game that has to have big returns. Like I felt bad playing it at certain points, but I think I wanted to feel worse. I wanted to feel much, much worse. And like, I would click on a guy's head, I would get an achievement that would be like, you killed 30 people with a rifle. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yep.
That's very fair. Yeah.
For real?
Yeah.
And I think like there's a lot of opportunity. There was a lot of opportunity, but I can understand why they didn't take these opportunities to do things even more powerfully, to make things even more harrowing. Yeah. And I maybe just wanted that game, especially after having heard about this game for so many years. I had maybe had an idea of what the experience would be based upon people's description of it, and I didn't get them. Yeah.
I think that's totally fair, and I do wonder, like, Jacob, I'm curious to your thoughts on the game overall too, but like I'm curious how much of like my enjoyment of this game is colored by like playing something like Black Ops 2 weeks earlier and just being like so fucking, I don't know the right word, exhausted by it.
I think that this, it falls prey to the thing a lot of video games do, which is that being good at this thing for a video game does not actually put it very high in the echelons of anti-war art, you know. And I think I think that the things that the game is more successful at are the specifically video gamey interrogations of like gameplay mechanics in war games versus war, you know, where it's like this. I think, Mike, if I can kind of assume what you wanted to be made to feel more bad about, it would be like, you know, I feel like the game probably doesn't go a lot further than just like American interventionism. Boy, is that like a fraught road to walk down, you know, but like it doesn't get super specific with that. And because this is like a video game where you're like 3 guys killing thousands of people, it does feel a little like more individual focused than institutionally focused. But do you want to be made to feel like worse as like a player or as an American? Like what were you hoping for?
I feel plenty bad as an American. I don't need any help there. No, yeah, I do. I want to be made to feel worse as a player of a game. And I feel like there were a lot more opportunities, and there were a lot of entrees where there are a lot of moments where they take 1 or 2 steps into this situation where it's like, you're doing this for fun. You have chosen to spend your free time doing this. Let's think about that. And like, I wanted more of that earlier in the game and like much more directly.
That conversation's always so interesting, and it's one we've talked about on the show plenty of times, is like, how do video games really broach that conversation? Because a lot of video games just by market necessity have to be fun, you know. Like an example I feel like I always use, like, if God of War 2018 is a game about how video game violence is bad, why the fuck is that game so fun? You know,
throwing that axe is great. Throwing the axe is great.
And it's like, I don't know, like, it's like it would, granted, Come and See is not about like how media violence is bad, but that is like the most harrowing anti-war media I've seen. And it's like, can a AAA video game do something like that? It's like, yes, you would like to think so.
Yeah, like how kind of like fucked up and great would it be if a game was like unput-downable because of how fun it is to play? Meanwhile, the game is looking you in the face and being like, you're really along for this, huh? Like, you're gonna kill some civilians.
Well, and I think that's I think that's what this is trying to do by making it feel. So I guess, is the argument here that it should, in fact, should it be more fun? You know, like, is that what you want? Because it's like, if you want to go all the way in the other direction, you have something like This War of Mine, which is like a game where you play as like civilians in a war zone, and it truly just sucks the whole time, and it's not fun to play at all. And like, you know, by the end of it, you're like, man, it sure does suck to be a civilian in a war zone, you know, like it's kind of the takeaway.
Right. You are correct, game.
Yeah, and it's like, I admire that game a lot, but like, absolutely, it is, you know, it doesn't have the opportunity to subvert because it is just like so on its face. And so I think Spec Ops trying to be kind of generic cover shooter, whatever, is like, we're gonna make it fun so you don't, it's not until the end that you think about like all the shit that you've been doing. But then is it too boring to pull that off? Like, should this be like a, Platinum Games level? Like, it feels like playing Bayonetta and then you realize that you've been killing civilians.
I mean, Blake, go ahead.
I think that's Armored Core, actually. I think that's what the game I'm describing.
Yeah, actually. No, Mike, go first.
I think I wouldn't complain if that's the case, but I think again, I finished, rolled credits not long ago, so I'm still putting a lot of this together. So I apologize if this is a little incoherent. But I think what I'm trying to say is that this game knows that there is a cultural position that video games have within the larger culture of violence, and especially violence as it relates to war. Mm-hmm. And there are things that happen in the game that draw that connection, that sort of point out the relationship between video games, violence in the world, war as it actually exists in the world. And the game both does those things by just doing them, and the game says, I'm going to do those things, and here I am doing them, and here you are as a participant in it. And the here you are as a participant in it comes late, and comes, I think, it's just not as effective as it could be. And I think there are these moments where you can and sometimes have to make choices that are, the game seems to rely on you understanding as a player that what you are about to do is difficult and weird and hard and uncomfortable. What the game does is just continue to be a game where you click the button and then you got to get past this area, and then after this area there's another long hallway to shoot guys in.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think it's hard to talk about some of this because it happens in the second half of the game. I think there are choices that the game does not overtly signal to you are choices, which, Mike, you may or may not have even realized that you were at some of those moments, and I think those are those are actually interesting, in that some of the worst that I felt playing this game was going back after playing it and reading something and being like, oh wait, I could have done that, which is actually a pretty bad feeling of doing a bad thing and then realizing that there was another way out of it, which is an interesting thing. But I do think I wonder, the white phosphorus scene that this section of the game ends with, that we're playing, is so much look at the bad thing that you did, that I feel like it almost breaks the game, because it's putting too fine a point on its own idea that it's supposed to be subverting.
The iconography of it is really, they just leaned into it really hard. I will say I do like that it switches to, is it the only significant camera change in the entire game?
With the overhead UAV
drop
shot
down the drone,
yeah, I think so. And I mean, we'll get there, but I that's a pretty explicit reference, I feel to the famous COD 4 level and whatever. So it is, there's a lot to say about that scene. Let's kind of speed through the rest of it.
We'll get there.
Okay, so whatever, we're going through. Walker falls down a big building. There is a section where you drop into a massive pit of corpses in a bit of kind of video game surrealism, where it's is this real, or is this how many whatever. And then there are these kind of characters that show up that are weird and confusing, and you don't quite know how to feel about them. This guy named Gould, who is supposedly helping you, but you don't really know that much. There's this radio guy who seems to be against you, or an enemy, there's a scene that I would say kind of doesn't work at all, where you're running away from a helicopter while the radio guy is like singing along to Dies Irae, I think, and it's I don't know what that scene is going for.
That's a dude cool.
Yeah, that I was like, this is the worst kind of trying to ape Apocalypse Now or whatever the hell it's doing.
Yeah.
There's okay, so there's the first time that we encounter white phosphorus, it is used on a bunch of people in front of you. And it is pretty horrifying. And you see them all dying, and your people are horrified by it. And I will say, as, you know, a 30-ish year old gamer, this game is where I learned about what white phosphorus was. And it is a pretty interesting thing that, you know, and I think speaks to the power of like media impacts on us, that like when I hear white phosphorus, I think war crime, and that comes from the video game Spec Ops: The Line. And earlier this year and last year, where there were reports of, for instance, Israel dropping white phosphorus on Palestine, I thought war crime. And I actually saw a surprising number of gamers being like, wow, remember that scene in Spec Ops that's about how bad it is to use white phosphorus? And like, you know, it's on some level it's dumb that is our reference, but like I do think that it actually shows that it's like, it is powerful to make claims about things being bad, especially these kind of like more unknown sides of war or whatever, because like that does get stuck in people's brains. And like if my first encounter with white phosphorus was in like a Call of Duty level where you like drop it on a bunch of people and it's awesome and you're like, fuck yeah, and you like, you know, motorcycle out of there, then maybe my responses to hearing about it in war zones wouldn't be so immediately like war crime. But because my first encounter was in Spec Ops, like that is the kind of connotation that it has. And I think that's interesting to hear about this as like a 14-year-old or however old I was when I first played this, and then have it come back around like that.
My association with it is, and I imagine this is the reference that is being made in the game. Mm-hmm. The game is referencing the United States use of it on civilians in Iraq in like 2000. Just brought it up just to see if I was right. In 2004. Like there was, also war crime, but being like war crime by Americans in the Middle East. Yeah.
And Blake, go ahead if you had something. I also think there is a lot of, this game is invoking Vietnam often in its like musical choices and whatever. And like Vietnam, we all know, like also napalm, war crime, and like white phosphorus is essentially the higher tech napalm, that it is doing the same thing, and it is just as kind of horrific, but it is just, we're not really using napalm anymore, but we are using this other thing that does basically the same, if not worse. And so it is, it is definitely just this, like, I don't know. I think it's really interesting for a game to basically stake a claim that no matter who is using something for any reason, it is bad, because that is so opposite to what Call of Duty does, which is often like, if we use the weapons of our enemies for a good purpose, then it's good. That like, it doesn't matter what Commander Price does, he can detonate a nuke, but it's like, well, he's doing it for the right reason, so it's all good. And it's like, even removed from the thing that ultimately happens with the white phosphorus in this game, just like the use of it at all is interesting, and it kind of makes me wonder, like, could you do that with other things? Like, could a game just be like, hey, cruise missiles, war crime, and like have that like mean something, because it is like really effective in this instance. Anyway, I
guess it's things like that just make me want to give the game credit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I don't know if I have anything more to say than that. I mean, like, it's there is a ballsiness in what it has to say in the medium it's a part of and the industry it's a part of, because like, I don't know, we can like sit and rattle off numerous important large scale anti-war movies or whatever. And it's like, when you talk about AAA games and the genre of the military shooter, you have like this and that one, the AC 130 level in Call of Duty 4,
and it's like
run out of options.
People list like Metal Gear Solid 3, and I'm like,
Sure,
I just played it. I don't
what?
know how effective it is at doing that.
And so like when I consider the time this game came out and the industry it was a part of and etc., it's like I do start to want to give it like, I don't know if I want to give it the maximum amount of credit because it is still like some fairly surface level, but I think it's like worth commending for what it's doing.
No, and I think that the most damning thing, or the most kind of impressive thing about this game is like what has come out since. Like literally,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
You know, it's
Right.
like if you know, I wish that this game had gone deeper. I think we can all list that like things that you wish this game had done, but it's the same thing as like you know, kind of a bizarre connection, but like when who is the guy who directed the Holocaust movie that won the Oscar? Do you know Zone of Interest? Jonathan Glazer. At the Oscars, when Jonathan Glazer got up on stage and made a pretty mild critique of Israel, and I was watching it and I was like, hey, good for him. Wish it had kind of gone a little harder. And then the next day, people lost their fucking minds over his like very mild critique of Israel, and it's like, maybe this is the best we can hope for. Like, maybe it is so hard to get any anti-war message through a like AAA video game production that like,
yes, it is.
I feel like the 12 years since this game came out almost make it more impressive, because like we haven't had a bunch more Spec Ops The Lines that are also like critiques of war.
I mean, wasn't it famously like it came out and they were like, we're not ever going to do another one of those. We're done with that.
I mean, yeah, like Spec Ops was a series, you know, like, and I think, but yeah, it's like there are games that have been. Rainbow Six Patriots was supposedly going to be a game about like ethical gray areas. 6 Days in Fallujah eventually came out as like a weird multiplayer co-op shooter, but was another one of these like, we're going to tell real war stories. And like, these games keep not coming out, you know? And so it's like, it is that thing where it's like, man, maybe it is so hard to do this in the wide studio system that like, this is almost the best we can get, which doesn't put it above criticism, but just like, you know, kind of makes it more impressive in retrospect.
For sure.
And probably also you probably kind of have to sneak it through in a certain way, because people who are going to be, or one imagines that the folks who will be the most interested in and receptive to an anti-war message will look at war video games and think, I don't know about if I need to do that. And the people who are really into war video games are going to play a game halfway through and be like, wait a minute, am I the bad guy? What the fuck is going on here? And so, you know, I would guess that that's an additional layer of difficulty that makes it hard to get something like this through.
Yeah.
Added to the fact that, like, I think if I remember correctly, like this game was not, you know, it was a critical success, but not a commercial success.
Yeah, it's hard to ever get like sales numbers, but Wikipedia says this game was a commercial failure. So
yeah,
who knows?
Okay, good enough.
Yeah, but and the thing, it's like this game had a multiplayer mode when it came out, and it's like you play the single player mode, and you're like, the message of this game is I should like jump in a lobby with my friends and like get slow-mo headshots on each other.
Get on in here.
So
you killed 30 people with sticky grenades. Woo! Congratulations.
So there is the first kind of choice. There's this weird kind of not. It's unclear what you're supposed to do in either, but there's a thing where there are some troops that you see that are torturing a civilian, and you have a choice to either like try to save the civilians or kill the dudes and go after Gould. He dies either way. it is kind of a half choice that is then expanded on later in the game. But you then get to this place, the Gate, which is this environmentally pretty astounding, like 2 super tall skyscrapers that are right next to each other, and they have a little channel through them. It kind of looks like there's some hotels that look like this in China. I don't think there is actually a building like this in Dubai. One of the things about the game is that you and your squad mates get more vocally aggressive as it goes on. That when you start, you're saying things like "tango down," and then in this scene, you tell Adams to take out a guy with a knife, and he says "sweet dreams, bitch," and slits his throat, which is a very Call of Duty style way of killing someone. And I thought it was notable. But then you basically see a whole bunch of people in front of you. Lugo describes it as an army of people. And you decide that your only way through is to use this white phosphorus mortar that's sitting next to you and basically carpet bomb the whole base. Blake?
I didn't play this.
Really?
What chapter is this in?
Chapter 8.
Oh, I thought we were playing up to...
Okay.
Let's see. I see the mistake. I'll just be quiet. And y'all take it over.
Yeah, but this is like the defining scene of the game. Like, this is why I had us play up till this point.
I thought we were playing up to chapter 8 because there is a white phosphorus scene earlier in the game. That's what I thought y'all were talking about.
All right. Well, we're still going to talk through it. So you decide that your only way through is to use the white phosphorus, and there is this video game character saying things confidently scene where Lugo says, like, he's like, isn't there any other option? We always have a choice. And your character says something like, no, we really don't. Yeah. And so then you'll load up a UAV camera into the mortar that is showing the scene from above, so it looks very much like the AC-130 mission from Call of Duty, except, interestingly, you can actually see Walker's face reflected in the screen, which is a cool little touch. And then you go on to bomb this whole camp with white phosphorus. There are red squares. You keep clicking on the red squares, and then you do the last red square, kills a whole bunch of people. You walk through the military base, which is full of just people on fire, screaming their lungs out. And then you get into the bunker where you killed a whole bunch of people, and you realize that it was full of civilians, and that you have just killed. In fact, all of the civilians that you impeded the rescue of earlier in the game when you broke that big hotel window. So it's like you have kind of fucked them over multiple times because you stopped them from being evacuated once and then again.
Walker, just go home. Just go home.
That is the thing. He says we just got to keep going. So Mike, we've talked around it many times, but like, how did you? This big reveal, it's like the camp, oh, it's bad. Was this the right way of killing people? And then you like get into this bunker and the game kind of takes over and it's like bad, bad, bad. And it just kind of pushes it in your face.
I mean, I hated it. I hated it on every level. I think I hated it exactly in the way that you're supposed to. I think it's like, where I went to when it starts, and I also noted and loved, it's like, surely there's something else we can do. And Walker is like, you're playing a video game. No, there isn't.
Put the goddamn thing in the mortar.
Yeah. Game says button, push button. You got to do button. And then you lower your head into the visual, that readout, the camera view, and it looks like the news in the early 2000s. Like it looks like it looks like Desert Storm. It looks like the Iraq War. It looks like stuff that I grew up watching on CNN, and I immediately went, God, fuck. Like paused it, counted to 100 and turned it back on, and then pushed the button a bunch of times, and how do I describe how I feel? It's like, what does the game show you? The game shows you then a bunch of incinerated bodies. You walk through this field of soldiers dying, and you turn a corner and you go into it's like covered area that's just full of completely incinerated civilian bodies. You get to the end, and there's a quick cutscene of a mother holding a child, just the flesh completely melted off of both of their bodies. They're like sort of fused into one shape.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, it is almost like Madonna and child pose. Like,
Yes.
it's very like biblical imagery.
There's almost like a shroud around
Yeah.
her in the way that, the way that it's been modeled. It feels to me in that moment like the game is like, on the one hand, it is like, bad, how bad dare you, bad. There wasn't a choice, but bad, and this is a bad thing, and it's bad that this happened. But in another sense, it's kind of like, you know how bad this is. You look, a mother and a child. Is there any worse thing that you could have done? On to the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And there's very little kind of like actual reckoning. The game sort of maybe trusts that you're going to do it, or maybe thinks that the way that it's beating you over the head with the symbolism of it is going to do it. But it comes across, I think, as more cartoonish than it intends to be, and takes a little bit of the air out of the meaningfulness of what just happened. That being said, like, how would I have done it differently? I probably would do it in a way that a AAA gaming studio would be like, you're fired.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I almost think that the more interesting moment is the firefight you get in immediately after, where you see a bunch of guys and they all scream murderers at you.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
is like, that is an interesting moment to be like, I mean, you've been fighting, U.S. military the whole time, but for them to be like, what the fuck did you guys just do? Yeah, I think it is that weird thing where it is also the kind of conflict that I have with real war coverage, in that, like, when you want to make clear how bad a war is, you talk about how many women and children are being killed in this way, where it's like, famously in the Obama administration, they revealed that when they killed people by drone, they counted any adult male in the area as a terrorist. And so it was like, when they were like, oh, we killed this many terrorists and then this many like civilian casualties, like the only civilian casualties were women and children, because they just counted any man as like a terrorist. And so it is, it feels, I am of two minds of it, like, with it, because I do think that the gaming public is so stupid that maybe they do need this, like, rubbed in their face in the way that the game does. But for me, it feels a little, I don't know. I don't like the just, like, woman and child, look at how bad it is that you've done this. But if I am viewing it from the perspective of Walker, if I don't think that the game's trying to make me feel bad, but describing this moment that, like, breaks him, then maybe it makes more sense, because I do think that he is so kind of war poisoned that he needs this sort of thing to, like, break his psyche, which is ultimately, like, what this kind of does. It's, I mean, it is, I would say it is this game's defining moment. Like,
I think
this is the moment of the game. It is the moment that, like, people talk about since the game has come out. And, like, I have quibbles, but, like, again, the fact that a major studio game has its defining moment as a war crime where you as a military service member kill civilians is, like, how much am I going to nitpick that? Like, that is impressive.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it's like, goes back to what Blake said. It's like, you gotta give them credit by, like, they got it through and they did anything at all. Yeah.
Jacob, do you deal with this, like, internal battle as, like, a person who covers games? As, like, you do kind of have to lower your expectations, but also sometimes you got to hand it to them, and it's like, how do you meet in the middle of those two ideas?
Yes. Yeah, and it's like, sometimes it is cool that, books have been able to describe anything for millennia, and when the first time a movie does it, we still think that it's cool. It's like there is this level of like, and I think, the game can make you perform the actions in a way that a movie or a book cannot. That you did push this button, even if I don't feel as complicit in the crime as like Walker does. It is still, it's interactive, and I think that it does hopefully like make you think about how thoughtlessly you do things in other games. I think it is not simply cool for a game, low bar for everything else, but there is a level of that as well, that it's hard to work through all those feelings.
Yeah.
These are, I think that's worth acknowledging, that it's like there's so much to untangle here with this is a 12-year-old game, is that what you said?
Yeah, 2012.
Like a 12-year-old game about this subject matter, released at the level that it was, for the audience that it was intended for, using the material that existed at that moment, like commenting on what games were doing then. Like, that's a lot. It's a lot to untangle.
And I mean, genuinely, this is said a lot in very dumb ways about a lot of things, but like, I don't think you could make this specific scene now, because it would actually feel too targeted. Like, I think if you had this happen now, people would say, this game is about Israel, and then there would be like a giant uproar about it. And I think that it speaks to, sometimes, like, if you ever read anything about war written well, it will feel like it is about the conflict that is currently happening, because like war has not changed that much. And like, I have read things about Israel that were written years and years ago that feel like they could have been written yesterday, because of just like the fundamental dynamics of power like don't change. But like, I think that it is wild that this kind of was maybe made at the only time in game development that it could have been, because if it happened too close to like the early 2000s, people would feel like it was, too much of an indictment of the US in Iraq, and like, you're not allowed to criticize that post 9/11 or whatever. And if it happened now, it would be too much of an indictment of other current conflicts happening. And so like, obviously there was bad shit happening in 2012, but it is this weird like bullseye that the game hit, where it was able to make a statement about war that felt somewhat general, of just like, hey, generally it's bad to kill civilians. Generally, like, this is not the thing that we should do. And like, it still functions. It still works. And like I said, there are not a lot of other instances of games doing this sort of thing.
I would love to. I mean, I read a few papers that I should have taken better notes on. There were like a lot of academic ink has been spilled on this game,
yes,
as you might imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that it's hard to read this in a vacuum, especially from Iraq. That like this, I would want to read something written closer to when it came out. And I'm looking at some of the things that I have here. It looks like they're a little bit later. Like this is 2021. This is 2017. So like that's a little bit closer. Like I imagine at the time people would have read this as like, oh, this is about the United States and Iraq. It's they gotta have. There's no way that it would have been further, and so maybe it would have felt safer, and it maybe would have felt less like you were being like, the virulent patriotism, whatever you want to call it, that followed 9/11 was probably diminished to the point where you wouldn't immediately be run out of your job on a rail for saying maybe killing civilians wasn't the best idea.
Yeah.
But it still would have been close enough that context would have been strong, especially given some of the imagery that's in the game, especially given the imagery that pops up when you do the phosphorus attack.
Yeah. And
Jacob,
Go ahead, Blake.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it is worth pointing out that this game was developed by Jaeger, who is not an American studio. They're German.
They're German.
And also, like, they had not made a game like this before and have not made one like it since, you know? Like, it
was written by Americans, right?
Yeah, it was written by Walt Williams. Jacob, have you read his book, Significant Zero?
No.
We should maybe read that.
Is that a book about Metal Gear Solid 4? Aha! Sorry. Go on.
No. No, Walt Williams wrote on like Star Wars, Battlefront, and BioShock, and this is like his big claim to fame as he wrote Spec Ops. So yeah, it was a German developed game, but with an American lead writer.
Yeah, and maybe that's in the like.
Bet there's some synergy there. Yeah,
the German. Well, yeah, obviously Germany has its own fucking history with this, but like, and it was published by 2K, so like, obviously there would have been American oversight on this. It's not like, oh, you know, you can release something critical of American patriotism as long as you do it in Germany. But like, it is an interesting kind of confluence of things.
Yeah.
And that's basically where we end for this section of the game. Mike, I guess here's a question. Do you think that you should have played Spec Ops: The Line before you wrote that essay years and years ago about like player agency? Do you think that this is like doing interesting things with that idea?
That's a good question. God, I wrote that video. That was probably 12 years ago, 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Yeah, would have been 10. I'm going to say no. But not for the like quality of that video. Not so that I could have like gotten it right or like included more in that itself. Because I think I like my perspective on this game now a lot. Especially not having played games like it for a long time. And it contributes to, I think, like a fundamental ambivalence that I have about it, that it's like both great and terrible, and I had a horrible time and I didn't like it, but I can respect a bunch of things about it, and like there are parts of it that I did, you know, like I think that I have a complicated view of it that I feel, at least in this moment, protective of, that I wouldn't trade for having played it, you know, at a time in my life where like being a dude with a gun shooting at other dudes on a screen was something that I was doing all the time, both for fun and for work.
Yeah. That makes sense.
It's a shame. It really makes me sad that the game is not available because I feel like playing it now is a very interesting context to play it in, and I feel like it will only become an increasingly interesting artifact of 2012 and of this kind of game.
Yeah, it is like capital I important, and it is only more so because of the lack of other games like it. You know, like the Tony Hawk 6 makes Tony Hawk 5 a little less important as a cultural object or whatever. Yeah. But like the fact that like there aren't more, that this game still is kind of more or less alone in like attempting to do the thing that it's doing at the scale that it's at. It makes it like it's significant that there are a lot of papers written about this and there's a book written about this, because that's not true of most games like that. Most and it is kind of, I do think it gets more attention for being a AAA example of this. Obviously there are lots and lots of indie games that are doing much more with this kind of like messaging and can be kind of more specific in their critiques, but like being big is part of it. You know, like
you also don't. I was just gonna say you don't. I don't. This is maybe not the right word to use, but it's harder to trap players in an indie game. You're gonna preach to the choir there. This one, you're gonna get some people, and maybe you're gonna get some of them being like,
this whole game is a trap. Blake, how do you feel going into the second half of this?
I'm excited. I feel like all the stuff that this game is kind of famous for is ahead of me. Yeah. I don't know. I like this game. I fuck with it.
Well, with that, Mike, thank you so much for being on Something Rotten. It is a true treat to have you here.
It was a pleasure to be here. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
I will say to all our listeners, I find it very hard to start listening to a new podcast. It truly feels like you're like adopting a new animal or something where it's like,
true.
how much of
Yeah.
this am I going to spend my life on now? But I am a devotee of Never Post. I listen to each episode of that. And actually, you know what? Fuck, I meant to talk about this earlier. You had, relevant to this game being no longer available, you recently had an episode where you were talking about like how everyone on the team organizes their music. And you were like, well, of course, I have everything saved locally on my machine, and I don't use streaming services, and I whatever. And I was like, this is the game version of the proof that, like, you should never let your games be controlled by anything else.
Don't trust the aggregators. Don't trust the streamers. Just have a big hard drive.
Yeah. Do you have a specific episode that you like to point new people towards?
For Never Post?
Yeah.
I think the newest one, like whatever's out when you're listening to this, most recent in the feed, give it a shot. The show begins with news items, just like 4 to 6 things that have happened in the last couple weeks. And so it's like a good little just sort of overview of what's going on the internet. And then two reported story segments that are just about me and some of the producers on the show, Georgia, Hans, Jason, our experience of what's going on online. And you can start anywhere. They don't build on one another. They're just basically like a news show. So yeah, start recent.
Awesome. Also, you do anything else you want to point people towards? I know you did the music for that Dan Olsen video recently, which was awesome.
I did, yeah. Dan reached out and asked me to write some music for his Justin Rolfe. I always get his first name wrong. Angry Video Game Nerd video, which was a lot of fun to write some music for that. And I also make another podcast called Fun City, which is a Shadowrun TTRPG AP pod. You can listen to us roll some dice in super future New York City trying to solve a big citywide conspiracy.
What do you think the Angry Video Game Nerd would have to say about Spec Ops The Line?
Whatever it would be loud and irritating.
That's right.
Fun City, starring other Something Rotten guest Bijan Steven.
Bijan Steven.
There we go. We brought it home.
Got the connection in. Well, thank you all for listening. Next week, we will be finishing Spec Ops The Line, so do that if you want. And until then, look, you can just stop playing the video game. You don't have to do any war crimes.
You can just go home. Go home. Walker, just go home.
Bye, everyone.